9 to 12 or 9 to 2, I don't care.
You and I know.
It just gets me out moving.
I know, because if you keep it up, I'm gonna cancel it on Saturday.
The competitive one pays more. If you're a center ref, it's like $50.
Yeah.
So, if I want to go up level, I can do more of it.
We're recording.
Oh, nice.
5:51.
Still got a middle left.
Take delay.
Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Could we all please rise for the pledge? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we do a roll call, please? Start with Brandy.
Brandy Pellissier,
Eunice Landry,
Eli Cedrelli,
Jason Henry.
Lila Adkins.
Heidi Duford,
Tim Broderick?
Karen Rocket.
Matt Chizokis.
Agenda review.
Make a motion to accept the agenda with all the accoutrements on the table as presented.
second.
Additions, subtractions. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 27th, 2022.
Second.
Discussion on minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. I will call our first public input to open that. Okay,
Nothing?
all right, and I'm going to close our first public input. And start with BES administration. Mail.
So I had submitted my report last week, and I don't have anything new to add to that. If you have any questions or anything you'd like me to go into a little bit more deeply, I'd be happy to.
Well, it's nice to read that the kids are respecting the flag and enjoying it.
Yeah.
And it's nice you set up a rotation for them.
So we took the 21 students that had participated and just broke them up into groups as like a lead and 2 support people. And then we have a couple of go-to students that are scouts and know a little bit more about all that. So if there's a problem or we need to fill in or if we need somebody to help train on the Wednesdays, these other students have been helping out. So it's been really.
And they actually fold it?
Yeah, they do the
Wow.
whole thing.
I've driven by a couple times on the way to work.
Seen
Stuff and seen out the folding, yeah.
We have some next steps to discuss that we haven't yet about getting maybe a couple of whole grade levels involved, but this was a start. It's a great way to start.
Thank you also for the SRO report. That sounds like it's working out well.
Very well.
Good, glad to
We're
hear.
very pleased.
Excellent.
Yep, I see him in the morning too.
Good. All right, informational items. We have our enrollments. Okay, not to be nitpicky, but that's what I do. They did the math wrong, so we're down a student at Prospect, but it got taken off of, it looks like it's actually a Barnstead student, but it got taken off the Alton line. Just, I mean, the AS report we have in our packet. Buildings and grounds, we had a meeting, but there's a pretty thorough update in our packet. Unless either of you have anything to add to that.
I think the only thing to add is that the work on the septic lines continues, and it's been extremely effective. This is according to reports that I'm receiving, so I can't tell you that I've witnessed it myself, but Sean has told us that it's been extremely effective, but it's going to take about 2 more full days to finish the whole building. Which I think doesn't need to be done immediately, so we can wait and sort of evaluate our financial position a little bit later in the year. I'm looking at Heidi because we haven't had this conversation. I think she's talked to Sean and I've talked to Sean, but
Come with the descaling.
yeah, and
So I haven't missed the lines in the hallway that were all gunked up. for the sewer line stuff that they talked about. He came and talked about sleeving it at one time, so it cost a lot of money, and said he got somebody come in that could descale it. Got quite a distance on it. Then the main corridor is done, but there's several other places, parts of the building that could use it as well too, but.
We've done about a third of what needs to be done in one day with 2 days to finish.
Also on the septic, I read that you had to do something for the modular.
It was just backed up.
Too much toilet paper.
Which is
You
actually a
need to use
discipline issue and very
Charmin, and
common in
then you
schools these
don't
days.
need to use those
Very
much.
common in schools these days.
That's what they say anyway.
Well, considering they don't like to use that bathroom, that's kind of.
Yeah.
It is not about using the bathroom.
Ah, gotcha.
Oh,
Say no more.
It is a disciplinary situation.
I got a jail full of those.
Okay. Kudos on the safety inspection.
yeah.
All right, information technology, update my packet on that.
So it wasn't in the emailed packet, the IT report, but it's in the packets on the table. You already had yours, right? IT's been a challenge, as you all know from your work on the joint board, that we're still trying to get staffed up. And with a lot of new people, they're still learning a lot about, I think in this school, it's more the software configuration environment than the hardware. But it's a lot to unravel. So no question, they're struggling and some people are frustrated and we understand. Including, we're working on the website. And in fact, I think when you see the joint board's budget, you'll see, and then a third of the cost in the Barnstead budget that you'll see later as a proposal, you'll see each school with a third of the cost of Apogee or somebody similar. And that contract would be built in such a way that they can come in and do the websites this year, not wait till next July. Like just come and get it done.
Okay, space needs committee report is on the agenda, but I didn't see it in the packet.
There's nothing in writing, but we had a meeting. Some of you are on that committee and were there. There were a few questions for the Space Needs Committee. One of them had to do with the layout, which I actually included a copy of Concept 5 with my report materials. There is one change, which I sent in to the Department of Education. It doesn't change our square footage, and it doesn't change our aid eligibility. So it's really just sort of a housekeeping change, but it's important because we had written a lot of our narrative around having all of the programs that are required in New Hampshire to be an approved middle school, which we lack right now as the building is configured. And that includes both a science lab and a family and consumer science room. And we had submitted a version of the floor plan that had 2 different rooms, both labeled as science labs, one for 7th and 8th and one for 5th and 6th. No. This plan, which I submitted to DOE, shows a 7-8 science lab and a family and consumer science room, which is something we need to meet the approval standards of a middle school. I understand from a conversation I had in Concord last week that the office that handles building aid applications has finished processing the 17 they received in July, and now it's a matter of sending their work through whatever bureaucratic process comes next. So we wait now.
Where's family and consumer science?
So if you go to D-Wing and on the left, way up at the top corner, where receiving and maintenance are, behind the cafeteria.
Okay, gotcha. Yep.
I tried to get it adjoining the cafeteria so that students could walk from family and consumer science into the cafeteria. That seemed like it would be nice, but that would have put an emergency egress from the building in that classroom, and the architect said no. Code problem. I tried.
All right. Administration, SAU administration. Financial reports.
Yep, do you have any questions?
I actually, I have a question about shared services. Is there any way that we can get a better picture of where we are in the budget by encumbering those expenses?
I will look into that, yeah. I can
Because
definitely.
it looks like we don't have encumbrances, but
Right.
we have a full budget, so it looks like there's a lot left and
Yes,
really, it
there's
probably
not,
isn't.
right. Yeah, I can figure that out and we can do a purchase order to encumber the funds.
The other questions I had, had to do with salaries, specifically, like on page 1, a huge, amount left in regular teacher salaries. Is that change of staff?
Most of it is.
It's a combination of a change in staff and some vacancies.
Yep.
Is our sheriff Title I?
But then I look at substitutes and we're way over on substitutes.
They have a long-term,
We have a line, I
yeah, so
thought
that would
that's
take, you
probably
know,
what it was.
it would offset that line, because there's a teacher that's not here.
And we have more than one long-term situation that we anticipate. So we have a long-term that will then become another long-term in a different classroom, and it's going to go on for a while this year.
Also on page 1, just questions about sped. We're not spending a lot.
We would love to be, but we are short some staff.
Must be short in regular, like, case managers.
We are.
Okay.
We are down 3 against the budget and 2 compared to where we would like to be. And have been advertising all year.
And those with, the other staff with retirement must be paralegals that.
So we are also
Paraeducated.
short, and again, it's a combination of short against the budget and below where we want to be, so those aren't the same number, right? There's what's in the budget and there's the number we think we should actually have in the school, but we're below both. So to some degree, you'll see some proposed reductions in next year's budget in those areas for those positions that we don't think should be filled, but we're also short compared to where we should be right now.
The other 2 areas, one is on page 4. The summary is on page 4, and that has to do with the psychologist. Looks like we're not spending anything. Is that?
Yeah, so we are funding, we've outsourced psychology services for all 3 schools. And we're using
Yeah, we're gonna be using the,
some of it.
yeah, the 53300 line, is professional services. So I may, move budget money from the salary and benefit line into that line because we don't have a
Okay.
employee.
But you also, whether you all realized it or not, you were funding half of psychology costs in this budget and half out of a grant every year anyway.
Right.
So we can still use that grant for some of it, so you may not see the same amount in that line, that professional services line that you would normally see. Because now we're talking about dividing among 3 schools.
The other area that didn't look like we were spending any money was improvement of instruction.
Page number, Eunice?
Right here. It's a
Page
5.
5.
Oh, right there. Tuition reimbursement. Which would it be?
Mhm.
Who's tuition? Staff? Yeah.
Teachers and staff, yeah.
Yeah, so that's money that's available to pay teachers' tuition
Yeah, I
for
know.
those who have notified us, right, that they're taking
Right.
classes, but
Yeah.
we haven't received
We haven't spent.
the requests yet.
And the last question I had was on page 7. Well, maybe I have more. Page 7. Building maintenance, the contracts. Big overage there. Is that because of the septic or?
It's just in general, there was a lot of inspections that weren't happening that needed to. So obviously it wasn't budgeted, you know, Sean came in, this budget was done prior to him. So you will see an increase in this budget season in that line, because there were quite a few that weren't getting done that should have been getting done.
That's always an area of concern for the budget committee because
We'll have it listed.
they wanna know why aren't we doing those things? Why do we have to contract it out?
I'll have them all listed and we'll be able to
We'll
explain
tell
it.
Well, it used to be, they always ask those questions, I should say.
It is generally though going to be the case this year, and some of it we're just saying, Heidi or I are just saying, fix it, do it. And others, like we're talking to you about the septic every month because it's adding up. It's probably safe to predict that we'll go over on the function for taking care of the building this year. However, as you can see, we're going to be under in some other functions, so that means we'll probably come to you looking, we may look for some transfers at the end of the year.
The other thing in building maintenance that surprised me is that they had requests for replacement machinery, but they haven't spent any money.
This year, I'm sure he'll spend it.
If we point that out, he'll spend it.
Yeah.
Okay. Forget I mentioned it.
It'll be something we need,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
Well, I know, but usually they,
Yeah.
you know, in the past, they've had a list of all the things that they needed to replace and,
Sean came long after the budget.
well, I know.
Yeah. And remember, you bought, you encumbered a
Tools.
bunch of money for tools, and he probably got a lot of what he needs at that time.
Right, that's it for me.
Anybody else? Anyone else? Okay, moving on to curriculum data and assessment. Please.
Good evening.
Hi.
You do have a report in your packet, but I just want to go over some highlights. We had our first system-wide professional development day on October 7th, where we had a speaker come in. And obviously, in addition to that, we had our GRACE training, and then in the afternoon, there was some collaboration time with Farnstead and Alton. Feedback so far has been very positive about the collaboration in the afternoon. We did a survey, and a lot of the surveys that came back said that we'd like to have more time to be able to work with our counterparts and really continue to have those open dialogues about what's going on. The next step for our collaboration will be on December 14th, where the schools will be working on their ICANN statements. They'll be looking at the format of that and really kind of breaking down, making sure that what's there is what we're teaching, and have conversations around those. And then we'll take the next step off of that is really start to look at what skills go along with those ICANN statements. Again, the idea is to come out of this year with a document that outlines exactly what's being taught, scope and sequence, and the skills that go along with those statements, so that we're consistent across the board, so that when we have early release days and we can start talking curriculum and instruction, we're talking about the same types of units and things of that nature versus groups being on different pages. So a lot of work to be done, but I think that based off of that original day, I think both groups are willing and ready to go roll up their sleeves. Yesterday I met with the professional development, the master plan. We set some norms. We also took a look at the pros and cons of the current documents. Again, we're looking at Prospect Mountain as sort of the basis and really making and tailoring that to what makes sense for elementary schools. But again, the dialogue between the two schools was really good about what they liked, what they didn't like. And our hope is that we'll have a draft to the faculties of both schools sometime in January, then to you guys in February, and then the final draft or the final report heading into the DOE sometime in April. This way, those that are up for recertification this year will be able to use the new plan moving forward, and then roll through the process on that. We talked about the ICANN statements. The reporting metrics, earlier in the year you had heard me talk about not only do we want to bring to you our state assessments and the results that go along with that, but we also want to look at other metrics that we feel really shows what our students are and who we want them to be when they leave Barnstead Elementary. And so I've been meeting with Cara to talk about some of those metrics. She's going to be doing some work with not only the faculty to kind of get their feedback, but also the community, so that we can come to you with not only that state assessment, but other metrics such as co-curricular participation or core values and things of that nature, and really kind of get a true picture of what's going on here, other than just the state testing part of it. So you'll be hearing more about that. The nice part about working with those metrics, it's also going to tie into our strategic plan and align well with that. The last piece is standardized assessments. We're talking at the system level about what standardized assessments are being conducted at each building, and really trying to look at is there an assessment out there that will work at K through 12, so that as the kids move up the grade levels and into the high school, we have the same set of standardized assessments so that we can track and look at the growth of our kids over time. So while we would love to really kind of roll up our sleeves and get that done for next year, most likely it will not be, because not only do we want to have people come in and present, but we want to get feedback from the faculty and staff so that we really understand what is the best assessment that's out there for our kids. So we'll probably be looking at the fiscal year 24-25. So
That's a great idea, because I know that we had No Child Left Behind, but I always thought it should be follow the child. So that standardized, doing a K through 12 assessment, you can follow the child, right from the beginning to the end, so.
it's a great way for us to really kind of see the growth, and making sure that they are making growth every year, regardless of where they come in at, right? And obviously, we'd love to have every kid on grade level or above, but if they're not, where are they? And making sure that a year's worth of schooling gets them a year's growth of education. So that's the hope of that piece of it. But then it becomes consistent. We can talk, again, amongst the schools and the high school about the feedback.
Also, and getting back to the metrics, that's a great tool for the parents too. Knowing what to expect their child to be doing as you go through the year. Great idea.
So you'll be hearing more about that in coming months.
Questions for Matt? Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a special education report that was on the table from Ruth. Upcoming trainings. And now we're on to Tim.
So on the table, I did a memo you've already heard about, emergency operations in a couple of different ways from Cara and Matt. But just to hammer the points home, we did develop, cooperating with the other two schools, a new emergency operations plan. We've filed it with the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We've also met with them and representatives from both our local police and fire agencies and the state police to talk about sharing some crisis preparedness drills. But first, we have school level preparedness to take care of. So first step for that was on October 7th, as you've already heard, all staff participated in our first CRACE training, civilian response to active shooting events. Next steps, Cara's working with folks from HSEM to plan a tabletop exercise for staff here at the school. Not sure exactly when that's going to be taking place, but anywhere from within the next few weeks to the next couple of months. And then administrators have some required training, required by federal law, that where we actually started talking this morning about making sure everybody's updated, and we've all completed those, and those have to do with incident command, using some national systems. So those are our next steps. There was a secure campus condition here week before last, as you're all aware. Totally by coincidence, at a staff meeting the day before that happened, Cara had introduced to all staff that there is a new EOP. As you might imagine, not everybody learned everything it says overnight. So Matt has facilitated some debriefing meetings since that secure campus event. We have what's probably going to be our final follow-up meeting on that later this week, but our focus has really been on what did we learn we need to teach and who did we learn we need to teach it to. Students were safe, everything worked, but I think from way on the inside, we learned a lot, and it'll only help us going forward. I talked today on Zoom with the folks from HL Turner. They were here on, Doug was here on October 11th with two of you, Sean, Heidi, and myself, talking about the A wing, B wing, and old lobby renovation. The all-in, everything you've ever dreamed of doing in the project cost is just under $1.5 million. That's the estimate as of today. We will not be spending $1.5 million, I feel pretty comfortable predicting. The good news is that the HVAC changes, door and window replacements, and thermal sealing components of the job come out to about $800,000, which is pretty close to what we have in ESSER. So even if that's off by, a little bit, we can figure that out. So that feels pretty good. Next step now is to figure out how much of the other stuff do we want to include. And I think if you're willing, that does mean another meeting with Sean, Heidi, Doug, right, to look at the drawings. I have the cost estimates, but not the drawings for this one as of today. The cost estimates, I gave you copies of on the table. So when I say the all-in cost is $1,481,000, if you flip to the last page of this, you should find $1,481,000. So this is just all the backup that goes with this report. He'll bring the architectural drawings whenever we want to have that next meeting. I know it's a tough time of year, so I'm asking the two of you who are on that committee to think about it, please, and maybe collaborate on when we might be able to do that with Doug. Sometime in the next 4 weeks would probably be good if we could do it. No, it's Jason and Lyle.
Oh.
You're off
Looking
the.
at me. I'm
He's
like,
trying
I'm
to
not
make you feel uncomfortable. It's actually him who has to do it.
When do they think, or when do you think?
They're ready, so we can schedule it, and because it's evening, they'll,
I think we just-
they're not likely to have a conflict. We're more likely to. You want to do it after the meeting? Maybe
Yeah.
the four of us, see what we can do.
Yeah.
So unless there are questions about that, but that gives you an idea of the scope and where we stand with that financially. There are going to be some choices to be made, but the good news is that the HVAC door and window stuff that absolutely has to get done will get done. And this does include, if you look at that floor plan that I referenced earlier, over in A wing, we'd be renovating the front window classrooms, but the HVAC system will have enough capacity to ultimately support all of those classrooms on the other side when ultimately or in the event that they're renovated in the future. So the capacity is built in for all that.
Tim, I just
Yeah.
have a quick question regarding that. If we fast forward, everything gets approved, this gets installed, what's the timeline there? Is this done
It's an 8-week project this summer.
during the summer? Thank
Yep.
you.
Good question. And that's how it's quoted. So one of the ways we could talk to Doug about that construction estimate would be if we did it on a different schedule, could we project a lower cost? And I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to talk to him about it. But this is based on hit it hard, get it done over the summer. I felt like I owed it to you to follow up on those modular buildings after talking about it last month. So here's the table again that summarizes what we've paid or what the district has paid since 2001. The issues in the buildings that we talked about last month have all been repaired, so that's a start. It doesn't mean we like them or they're ideal, but at least there's not water pouring in onto the floor today. The buyout price, I think I told you that if it was more than $1, I would think the price was too high.
More than $1.
I think the price is too high. The buyout price at the end of the current lease for the two buildings would be $122,250. The lease on a single 6-classroom modular building would be $13,765 a month on a 60-month lease. I've actually given you an artist's rendering of what that building looks like. We also have a floor plan that I didn't give you tonight that we'll share with the space needs folks.
That's an expensive That's expensive too.
That's expensive. Everything, there's a theme, everything's expensive. That building could be purchased for $1 million, $995,925 instead of being leased. None of this, lease or purchase, includes the site work, the concrete, the utilities, right? That, there's some underground electrical, there's sewage, there's water supply that would all be
You
part
can
of
do that
this.
yourself though, right?
We will cost it, we will get prices, because the Space
didn't
Needs
on the
Committee
last
will
one.
need to know this information during its public information sessions over the next several months. So we're in a good position now to put that together. So yes, there are alternatives. This is one of them. Put a 6-building modular next to this building. It doesn't solve a list of problems, and it costs probably 1.2 million by the time we're done with the related costs.
I can't believe the purchase price on those that we already have,
The
that we
ones that are
paid
out
so
there,
much
I know.
for. Unbelievable.
And then it's on your agenda, but because I was ending very cleanly at the end of a second page, I didn't want to add a third page to my written report. We're working on our part. I told you the NHSBA policy review starts with us doing sort of a self-analysis of policies. We are on the letter I in that work. So another month, and we should be
I thought
finished.
that sounded too good to be true when you brought that to us.
It's a lot of work. It needs to be done. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
You can't start by date of last, thought maybe the 1980.
No, yep. We're counting them all.
Questions or comments for Tim? All right, moving on to action items. We have snowplow bids. Heidi, do you want to say anything about these?
Sure, we contacted quite a few vendors, and 3 did respond. We had one that came out to look, but they did not, send in a bid. R&K Landscaping, is the one that Sean is recommending. He's worked with him over the years. Obviously, R&K has been working in Barnstable plowing, the past few years, at least since I've been here. He is a little higher than K&B Excavation. We don't know anything about K&B Excavation. We have budgeted $16,000 in this year's budget for snow plowing.
Well, if we don't do the church, you know.
If you don't do the church, right, the cost is lower because we do have 2 separate.
How much are shovels, you know, I mean.
I make a motion to accept R&K Landscaping for $19,600. 2 years or 1 year?
2 years.
For 2
so,
years,
yeah.
same price both years.
Yes.
Second.
Discussion on that?
I don't know if you've already done this or not, is there any value in going back to R&K and seeing if they'd be willing to negotiate, like meet them halfway? Like we budgeted 16, can we? And if the answer is no, that's
We could
fine,
try.
I just,
Yeah, we could try.
Do you want to amend my motion?
Well, was 16 what we paid for the prior contracts? Is that
I
what we
believe
budgeted
so,
16?
and you have to remember that gas has
Fuel.
gone up.
everything's gone up.
Right, so
Yeah.
that's why it's.
Labor, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I can appreciate an existing relationship too, there's value there, so if that's what Sean's recommending, I wanna go in that direction as well, I just didn't know if it's worth asking. And if the answer is no, then we'll still go with it, but
Does that include treatment? Or is it just plowing? Because remember the prospect bid, we had separate
like sanding and all that.
sanding and
Yes, all,
stuff, the whole 9 yards. Okay.
Yep.
And that's for the dirt lot and like a pathway over.
So the sidewalks,
We do.
in-house. And we
Yeah.
have 2 snow blowers that do need repairs, but they are being repaired.
Yeah, so I don't mean the sidewalk, but like
Pathway over to the dirt parking lot.
there's like a
The
roadway.
dirt road.
To walk.
The
Yeah.
walkway, I'm thinking we do that
That's
in-house.
us. Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
it's not the vendor.
he basically does the
But he
parking
does the
lots.
dirt lot.
I'm thinking he does.
he must, right?
Yeah.
It's always been done, has it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, then he has.
He does.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything else on that? All those in favor?
Aye, with a consensus, if you can get a little cheaper, it'd be great.
We can try.
Only give us 17.
Okay, snowplow, personnel reports.
What do we have? Make a motion to accept Susan Spesky, second grade teacher resignation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Make a motion for new hires, Sarah Jamidi, I don't know, paraprofessional, and Allison, man, you get these
Oh,
names.
that's tonight.
I say
As presented.
as presented, that sounds great, so I can't say that
It's
last name.
pronounced as presented.
Paraprofessionals.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. Make a motion to accept the athletics positions as presented.
Second.
I have a question.
I do too.
Can somebody explain how they've broken up the duties of the athletic director?
I can. So if you do the math, that is 1/3 of the stipend amount and 2/3 of the stipend amount. So when our previous athletic director took on other commitments that prevented him from being available for the job here, we talked to ADs at the other schools. Mr. Perrin, who you see listed here for 2/3 of the stipend, is the AD for the middle school athletic programs at Alton Central School. So starting with the winter season, for the winter and spring, he'll take care of both schools. But that left us needing somebody to cover the fall, which the assistant principal agreed to do. And I thought it was only fair and appropriate because it's in addition to her regular responsibilities that we pay her 1/3 of the stipend. So it's by season.
And may I add that Christy's done a fabulous job on top of all her other responsibilities. She knows her stuff in that department. She's done it in the past, but she's really been super helpful. And we would have had a very difficult fall without her willingness to help us.
Yeah, I wasn't questioning.
No, I know, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
I was just trying to figure out who
Yep.
was doing what.
It's by season, so it's thirds.
And then I have a different question. Are we going to have a boys B basketball?
I'm trying to remember. I'm not exactly sure how that process works, to be honest with you. However, I know that with the soccer season, once they saw how many students tried out, then we made the decision to have a B team. I would assume, but you know what happens when you assume, but I would assume that would be similar with basketball. The only question I have is it different with basketball because of all the scheduling of time for the gym? But that's how it worked with soccer. We didn't plan on a B team, but because you base it on the number of students that participate, and we want to provide as many kids as possible the opportunity to
Who
participate.
had a B team?
We didn't have a B team. for
Nobody had a
soccer.
B team.
They just kept everybody, and
Was that what they ended up doing?
Yeah,
I
'cause you
think
can
there
do,
were 2 schools that we played that were
Right.
technically co-ed, and so we played 2 games.
But if we
traditionally
had,
And that
soccer.
included the girls as well.
But the
so it
intention
wasn't-
was to be able to have those kids play in those games, otherwise we wouldn't have probably kept all of those students on. But by committing to playing those other B teams, that not all schools have B teams.
Right.
So by committing to play those.
I just think basketball
So-
is looked at.
I will say
Differently
that was a disaster,
in the
the
past.
co-ed thing. Because the girls, we were allowed to have like 4 girls on. So you can say like keeping the kids allows them to play, but most of them sat on the bench, including a whole bunch of 8th graders that have played since they were like 3. So I kind of disagree with that, but
I'm just sharing what the intention was.
yeah, no, and again,
From the boys' coach, I just on the heels of that, I know you're going to add. He was very transparent, and he addressed this on probably day 1 of tryouts, based on the feedback, how many kids showed up. We can agree to keep everybody, and you'll be a part of the team. And I think a lot of kids appreciated that versus maybe not making the team. Now, did that equate to not all the kids playing, even at the 8th grade level, perhaps because this is middle school level sports? That was the boys' team
Yeah.
situation. So
but I think for basketball, like we've always had an A and a B, which
Yes.
allows them to all get some playing time versus if we just have an A, then, especially basketball, because there's only 5 people on the court at a time, then it's kind of saying to the 5th and 6th graders, like,
I just thought it was maybe we
you're
didn't
not
have a
gonna get
coach
any
yet.
time.
It could be, although I noticed that the girls' A and B coaches listed
Well,
as the
that
same
part-
person.
Yeah, that part was strange to me too, because we've always had 2 separate ones. But that's why I asked, like, if the process
Well, not
is-
always,
We'll get back
I
to
mean, Ron can't do
I can't answer those questions because I'm
But
not
he had
handling
assistants.
athletics.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
put
just
on the
clarification
table.
of
We'll get back
the
to
reason
Well,
there's no
no,
beat
but-
is because of, again, Cam Bailey coached last year, he's no longer here, so maybe it's just an open spot. But to Eliza's point, it'd be really, I would hope we would put it out there if that's the reason that it's just not listed.
You're gonna need to, there's enough, I mean, I coached up until last year here.
We'll find coaches.
You're gonna have enough to do a B team for, so I can schedule those games and those kinds of things, whether that coach is gonna do both or another coach, you'll have enough kids, and there's enough schools out there with B team boys, especially for basketball. There wasn't an issue, even boys or girls, for B teams usually.
May I suggest then, in light of this discussion, that you appoint this slate of coaches with the girls and boys basketball candidates only being appointed for the A teams right now, and then give us a chance to come back next month, or Cara to come back next month after talking to Russ and Christie,
Well,
and figure out who might be able to coach those B
But
teams.
did the girls coach put in for both A and B?
She may have, but does that work? Have you done that before? Same coach?
Well, Ryan McKenna.
He's been doing A and B for, and then when he wasn't here, the one year it was Mike Capsalis and I just helped, but it's always been one coach for A and B, for the girls at least.
So that does work.
Because,
Well,
well, limited
different
gym,
guys' time.
limited gym time, you don't have, so we split the gym with, so it depends.
Well, so even before, like the boys always
Two.
practiced together and the girls practiced together,
Mhm.
but there were still 2 different coaches, at least for the boys, that's how it was. And then
Boys.
the only problem, I haven't seen the schedule, but there's been some years where like the A girls and boys have traveled together and the B boys and girls have traveled together. And then there's been other years, and even sometimes it's like 1 week it's all the girls are together. So that's where I feel the problem could be if you have one
That's what I was
coach for 2
questioning,
teams.
yeah. I'll
Cause
do
that
some
has
looking.
happened before, but in the past we had like
Well, yeah.
assistants
In the
that
past,
would
you had-
like help.
Yeah, you had helpers, but that's, again, that's the
Not
athletic director,
paid assistants, but assistants.
that would be the athletic director scheduling. And that one athletic director was doing it, scheduled it that way, so it doesn't have to be scheduled that way.
Yeah, so again, I haven't seen the schedule, but
Depends on how you do the schedule.
They just recently had their scheduling meeting,
Yeah.
so we'll have to see what came out of that.
Yeah.
As a
So in the
region.
past, there was a lot of support, and I saw on the girls' end for a lot of, several of us helping coach. And then the boys just didn't have the same support, they had a coach for each team, so when they split, they could split. And the girls, we had at least 4 of us, and so if there was a different, had to go different directions, we could do it. But again, as the athletic director scheduling, so I mean, I don't care which way you wanna do it. I retract my motion. Somebody want to second that?
the retraction.
Do I have to second it?
She can just scratch
I would
it out.
scratch up my motion, I'll make another motion. To accept the slate of, for athletics for 22-23 for the coaches, leaving out the B team, girls basketball and B team boys basketball.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that?
It's exhausted.
Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Make a motion for 22-23 co-curricular activities, which is listed as, on the sheet as presented, just like that way.
Second?
Are these the amounts that we have approved in the past? I know that, I believe some of these functions, don't they come before the board, maybe that's new and based on time and make recommendations for the amount to be paid? But
That is the contract language, and none of these are new.
Well, so these aren't committee appointments, which are governed by the CBA.
Okay.
So these are,
Oh, that's true.
These are not
It's
CBA
specific to
items.
yeah, specific to the committees, that's right.
however, I did an analysis of stipends between elementary middle schools. And actually, you might be surprised to find that in general, Barnstead had the higher stipends for co-curricular, extracurricular activities, not the lower ones. If there are changes here, and I just can't tell you exactly what they are because I don't remember, it was about 6 weeks ago. If there are changes here, I think robotics might have been 1,000 previously, or 1,200. Somebody just whispered to me. There is enough money in the budget because of positions that we have not filled, either on committees or in stipends. And then the ski program, there has been, I'm gonna look at somebody who knows while I say this to make sure I'm right. It has been a co-advisor situation as is proposed here, but it has also been an advisor and assistant situation where one person had more of a stipend and the other one had less. So we've taken the money and shuffled it based on how they intend to divide the responsibilities. And I'm getting a nod, so I said it right.
Yeah, there's always been multiple people.
Oh, it wasn't you, it was her. And then on the back, you should notice that all of these mentoring-related payments, none of these are from our budget. These are all from the federal Title IIA grant, which is a teacher development, professional development, and mentoring grant from the federal government. It's intended to be used for things like mentoring programs. So when Matt joined us, he wrote Title IIA grants for all of our schools to provide these programs.
So why, I understand why the coordinator is more, but for
Yep.
the mentors, why
Yep.
are there two different amounts?
Some people are mentoring 2 new staff and others are mentoring 1 new staff. There's a reason for everything.
I assumed there
Yep.
was, but
Yep.
Okay, so vote on the co-curricular, all those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Yes, but I just have one more question, I'm sorry. I was hoping to see student council on here, is that because?
Me
we don't
too,
have
and we haven't
any-
had an applicant, and I would love to see student council. The other thing, and this goes to me doing a comparison and knowing that we had enough money in the budget to move some things around. National Junior Honor Society in the middle school. I would, and drama, we posted drama director. And we still have those opportunities and that money and would love to find anybody, either from our staff or from the community who's qualified to do those 3 things. Student council should be staff, right? National Junior Honor Society should probably be staff also. Drama director, call your favorite aunt.
if that mean, I could do it.
Do you,
interesting.
I don't wanna open up.
It would be wonderful to be able to fill those positions. Right?
Drama. Is drama after school for
Yep.
ACS?
After
Do
school.
you see where I'm getting with that?
Yep.
Would there be an opportunity to coordinate efforts, maybe?
We've had at least a passing conversation about it. I don't think we've just quite gotten around to drilling down on that.
I would love to see something obviously here,
Of course.
but
We have a stage and everything.
yeah,
It might be a little small, but we have one. So we should be able to use it. Maybe somebody will hear about this meeting from our staff and come forward and express interest in one or all of these 3 things.
Sounds like maybe the union would push us along. It's great, positive stuff.
Okay, so did everybody vote on co-curricular?
Yes.
Alright, so we're unanimous on co-curricular, alright. Mentor, we just need a motion on.
I'll make a motion to accept the slate as given for the mentor program.
second.
Discussion on that one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That brings us to public input number 2.
How many of those positions you get filled?
Closing public input number 2. I forgot to ask if we needed non-public this evening.
I don't.
Does anyone have a non-public issue that we're not aware of, okay. All right, we do not need that. Future follow-up items, so we gotta schedule that buildings and grounds meeting. And I'm sure you have a host of other things to bring.
For next agenda, was there a need for us to circle back on the donated funds? Or did we settle that already?
No, there is, thank you
I
for
just didn't forget.
asking. So you accepted the $3,000 donation. Did we have you sign the letter tonight?
I did.
Great, thank you. And so we'll send out the letter of thanks on the board's behalf. But you're right, that part of the question now is what do you want to use that money for? Next agenda?
Yeah. Anything on the generator for next agenda?
They have to be like that.
We're gonna have a buildings and ground meeting, we talk about there, I guess.
Okay, that's a great idea. I actually do have an update on the generator, but I'll save it for the buildings and grounds meeting.
Thank you.
So we'll probably have a space needs update as well.
We'll probably have an update on how the election went, using the school.
So I can't remember, they didn't ask to have March elections here? They're doing
Just
that
these
town
two.
hall, just these two.
Just these two.
I read in the minutes from the last meeting, which I wasn't able to attend, but that was when you accepted the Pat Lucy donation. But it says the staff is gonna determine.
I think the conversation that I remember, and I'm sorry if the minutes are a little different from this, was that the board would seek input
Yeah,
from staff before making a
Suggestions.
decision, or you would talk about some options and then ask the staff to weigh in on those options.
I wonder if the union would do a survey.
I could
Probably
ask.
since the
are you sorry you came tonight?
it was an opportunity instead of us board members making a decision saying what they should be used for. It'd be nice to get the feedback from the staff if anybody had any.
Especially there's probably staff that are still here that were here when she was here and.
So would you like us to survey staff for ideas and then bring those to you at your next meeting?
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I see a
somebody could do
volunteer
that.
maybe on this.
Yes, please.
Excuse me?
What?
Yeah.
Are you giving me
Not
assignments
asking
there?
you.
No, nope.
Only if they want to, but I'm sure there's just, you know, but.
Alright, anything else, future follow-up? Agenda items? Next meeting
18th.
is,
November 22nd?
is it actually November 22nd, or are we off it?
We're
is
off,
November.
that's
what I
the
have.
23rd,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Great,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
6:51, this is my
That
record
is
setting
a
meeting.
record, yeah.
This is my day. Alright.
So we can kill the camera.
Alright, I have my calendar open. Oops.
So
And we
we
have
don't have meetings this week?
Right, so we have to work on Farmstead